You should hear what keeps him up at night.
This is what keeps me up at night. I don't understand how my fellow Americans, I don't even understand how this election is close. And yes, I'm voting for you, but I would also vote for that wall over there.
Well, he's half right. We do need a wall. To keep out gang members, fentanyl dealers, human traffickers, and Anna Navarro. What's funny, though, is that Stern actually thought that was a compliment. Stern has become such a wussified sycophant, he doesn't realize that telling Kamala that he'd vote for a wall is telling her that he knows she's as dumb as one.
Howard Stern didn't just fall off, he willingly jumped off the edge of relevance. And this time, it wasn't some late-night blog or cranky think piece that exposed him. It was Greg Gutfeld, live, raw, and ruthless. Imagine the man who built his empire torching taboos getting absolutely dismantled on air and saying nothing. Not a peep. No snarky comeback, no edgy retort. Just a hollow stare from a man who once made millions by being unfiltered, now neutered by his own elite comfort. Gutfeld didn't attack. He detonated. What used to be Stern's brand, anti-authority chaos, has curdled into out-of-touch whining from a Hamptons throne. Oh, it's so hard being rich and adored by celebrities. Spare us the sob story, Howard. People are rationing insulin and you're crying about how exhausting dinner parties are with Robert Downey Jr. This wasn't a roast. It was a cultural execution. The old king didn't just lose his crown. He got laughed off the stage. And let's talk about the makeover. Stern, the man who used to mock everyone with impunity, now wants to be seen as a sensitive sage? The same guy who exploited the vulnerable for shock value is suddenly leading the moral brigade? Please. His transformation isn't growth. It's a PR cleanse. He didn't wake up enlightened. He woke up scared. Scared of getting canceled by the same Hollywood machine he now worships.
Stern got even more pathetic, wondering how she doesn't nap.
When you said you don't nap, I get it, because what you've taken on is extraordinarily difficult. And I mean, do you feel the pressure of the moment in the sense that, when I met you out in the hall, I said, I'm really nervous because I want this to go well for you. I want it to go well for the country.
Hold on. I need a minute.
And who's in his new circle of fake virtue? The usual suspects. Kimmel, Silverman, Bihar, Ian Black. All card-carrying members of the I Wore Blackface, but now I quote MLK Club. It's not redemption. It's damage control dressed up as progress. They're not evolving. They're rewriting their resumes and hoping nobody checks the archives. The worst part? Nobody forced Stern into this mess. He didn't get dragged. He walked into the glittering halls of the elite and slammed the door behind him. He traded in grit for glamour, truth for acceptance, and rebellion for relevance. Once the man who stood outside the gates, throwing firebombs at the establishment, now polishing the silverware inside. Greg Gutfeld didn't just throw shade, he exposed the entire illusion. And as Stern sat there, marinating in silence, one brutal realization came into focus. The self-made voice of rebellion has become nothing more than a well-dressed echo of the system he used to mock. He's not shocking anymore. He's shook. Howard Stern didn't just lose his edge, he handed it over, gift-wrapped in Purell. The man who once made a living torching phonies now is one, whispering about diarrhea and dog rescues while pretending he's still a rebel. Enter Greg Gutfeld, cool, calm, and brutal. He didn't rant, he didn't scream, he just exposed Stern with one clean swipe, and Stern had nothing. No comeback, no fire, just a blank stare from a man who's traded shock for safe spaces. Gutfeld didn't need to twist the knife. He showed us what Stern's become, a self-censored mouthpiece desperate for elite approval. The guy who once tore down Hollywood now begs for a seat at its table. Stern didn't get canceled, he surrendered. And in doing so, proved the loudest truth of all, the rebel isn't dangerous anymore. He's domesticated. Howard Stern's fall didn't need fireworks. It was painful enough just watching. The guy who once spat on celebrity culture now clings to it like a lifeline. The same voice that once shredded elitism now name-drops stars like he's desperate for a +1 invite. And after locking himself away in luxury for 2 straight years, something snapped. Not in his body, but in his spirit. The raw, untamed voice of rebellion turned into a trembling sermon about germs and safety protocols. Stern didn't just mellow out, he morphed into everything he once torched. The man who championed freedom started shouting for mandates. The shock jock who mocked fear now sells it. His COVID-era meltdowns weren't edgy, they were authoritarian theater. And Greg Gutfeld, he saw through it all. No yelling, no drama, just a surgical takedown that felt more like a final diagnosis than an insult. Gutfeld didn't roast Stern, he revealed him. And when the moment came, Stern didn't push back. He froze. No punchline, no edge. Just a hollow silence from a man who used to dominate every mic he touched. This wasn't evolution, it was extinction. A cultural outlaw turned fragile relic begging not to be mocked. And if you needed one more moment of proof, Stern whining about Maya Rudolph's Kamala Harris bit on SNL. That was the end. Suddenly satire was too risky, comedy was too sacred. From a guy who once joked about school shootings on air. He didn't find his conscience, he just found a safer brand. The fire's gone, the fight's gone. And in its place? A once iconic voice reduced to a polished whisper, praying nobody looks too closely. He didn't ask for permission, he got fined, banned, censored, and doubled down every time. That was his fuel. That friction made him dangerous. But Gutfeld, he was forged in a different fire, one where the outrage mob cancels first and asks questions never. And instead of backing down, he turned mockery into a weapon and censorship into a punchline. So when Gutfeld casually labeled Stern a sellout, it wasn't just a jab. It was the sound of a torch being passed, or more brutally, ripped away. Stern didn't just fade into irrelevance, he volunteered for it. What we watched wasn't a media spat, it was a symbolic unseating. On one side, Gutfeld, the modern misfit jabbing the establishment with every sarcastic breath. On the other, Stern, floating above it all in a designer hoodie, chasing validation from the same machine he once tore apart. Gutfeld didn't scream, he didn't rant, he didn't need to. He simply held up the before and after, Stern the outlaw and Stern the ornament, and let the silence scream. It wasn't venom, it was nostalgia weaponized, and it cut deeper than any insult ever could. While Gutfeld joked about Feminine Friday, the real punchline was brutal. Stern, the king of chaos, had become the moderator of polite, pre-approved conversations. He wasn't shaking the system anymore, he was soothing it. And when the New York Post splashed his dinner with Jennifer Aniston and Jon Hamm across the page, the contrast was radioactive. This wasn't the guy who used to call Hollywood fake. This was a man begging for a seat at its table. The old Stern would have obliterated the new one. That version wouldn't have tolerated the soft interviews, the gentle Kamala Harris praise, or the elite dinner parties. But now, Stern looked like a man hoping to get booked on The View instead of mocking it. And once Gutfeld framed it that way, there was no undoing it. The image stuck. Twitter caught fire. TikTok turned it into a meme. And the message was crystal clear. Howard Stern didn't just change, he surrendered. And the crown? It's not his anymore. Reddit didn't erupt in outrage, it mourned. Not with grief, but with grim acceptance. The comments weren't angry, they were surgical. It wasn't, how could Gutfeld say that? It was, he's right. The takedown didn't feel like an attack. It felt like someone finally saying what everyone had quietly suspected. Howard Stern didn't just lose his edge. He vacuum sealed it, stored it next to his organic hand sanitizer, and asked for applause. Gutfeld didn't spit fire. He handed Stern a mirror and let the reflection do the screaming. The same man who once mocked school shootings with grotesque bravado now curls up at the idea of a Kamala Harris impersonation. The former lion of live radio now purrs politely through celebrity interviews, worried more about image than impact. That wasn't evolution. That was embalming. The betrayal hit deep because it wasn't fictional. It was documentary-level real. Stern used to mock power. Now he is power. He once gutted elites for their vanity. Now he shares wine lists with them. And Gutfeld didn't need a rant. He used Stern's own resume as a wrecking ball. That eerie stillness after the jab. That's what cracked the internet open. Silence. No comeback, no deflection, just a weathered man blinking through the realization that he no longer scared anyone. And the crowd noticed, not with applause, but with autopsy tools. TikTok users sliced up the moment into viral confessionals. YouTube was flooded with thumbnails screaming, "Stern is done." Comment sections turned into digital funeral homes for the king of shock. The final twist? Gutfeld didn't even gloat. He didn't need to. He made the audience do the math. Stern, the man who once screamed at the world, now needed its permission to speak. And that's the cruel poetry of it. Stern wasn't dethroned by outrage. He was erased by contrast. He didn't get canceled. He canceled himself. The firebrand who once ripped sacred cows apart is now one of them. Soft, revered, and fattened on relevance. Gutfeld didn't burn down a legend. He exposed the ashes we'd all been pretending were still flames. Just a mirror. That's all it took. Because when you're a legend, your past isn't your legacy, it's your shadow. And once it starts outrunning you, even your most loyal fans turn cold. Not because you changed, but because the change felt like surrender, dressed as enlightenment. Stern didn't evolve. He shrank. He didn't trade chaos for clarity. He swapped danger for dinner invites. What made it sting wasn't that he softened. It's that he played it safe. A man who once shattered rules was now clinging to them like a lifeboat, kissing the very rings he used to piss on, applauding the same elites he once torched like kindling. Gutfeld didn't invent the betrayal, he just pointed at it and said what no one else would. This wasn't growth, it was retreat, not conviction, calculation, and suddenly the clown became the judge. Gutfeld didn't need polish, he didn't need pedigree, he came armed with sarcasm and a meme arsenal, and tore through Stern's porcelain reputation like it was made of wet paper. While Stern obsessed over etiquette and access, Gutfeld ran straight through the gates with a Molotov made of mockery. Not pretty, not refined, just real enough to hurt. That's the difference. This wasn't about left or right, it was about raw versus rehearsed. Gutfeld didn't look smarter, he looked freer, dangerous, willing to say the unapproved thing, the risky thing, the kind of thing that used to be Stern's whole brand. Now, Stern looked like he was trying not to get kicked off a guest list. The man who once humiliated women for sport now flinches at parody. The guy who played in filth now wrings his hands over fake scandals and sanitized scripts. Maybe it's guilt, maybe it's penance. But in the arena of public perception, guilt looks a lot like weakness. And weakness doesn't sell. So what's next? Does Stern wake up, rip off the velvet gloves and reclaim the fire? Or does he fade deeper into irrelevance, whispering into a mic no one's scared of anymore? Because Gutfeld, he's still swinging, still loud, still messy, but still fearless. And that's what wins now. Whether Gutfeld inherited the torch or just yanked it mid-speech, it doesn't matter. The moment landed, and it was clear. One man still had teeth, the other was polishing his dentures. Gutfeld threw down the gauntlet. Stern didn't even flinch. And that silence, that wasn't peace. That was the sound of an era ending.